This is a special cut down version of Photo Walkthrough episode number 128. On today's show I'm going to show you how to produce a high key, high colour, high contrast style of portraiture photography using Photoshop and Lightroom. If you'd like to see the rest of this tutorial, head on over to photowalkthrough.com where you can find this and all of our older shows completely free, and you can subscribe to receive them regularly whenever they're released. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Photo Walkthrough. This is tutorial 19. Today we're going to take a look at what I call venture style portrait processing, and the reason I call it that is that the venture photography company seem to have a sort of a regular style, a house style, for doing sort of very high key, high colour portraiture. A couple of friends of ours had some portraits done with them. They look beautiful. I think it's a very attractive style, particularly for sort of family portraiture. So I just thought it'd be fun to try and see if we could recreate that effect. What we're trying to achieve is high colour, high key, very bright sort of colourful style, and we're going to be using Photoshop CS5 here, but the techniques we're going to use will work in almost all the old versions of Photoshop, because all we're going to use is the curves layer, and we're going to just put a number of curves layers on and just try and achieve the effect we want with just those curves layers. So let's start off with a little bit of colour correction. We've got an image here that I shot a couple of years ago. It's of my sister. I was playing with some studio lights at the time, and as you can see I didn't do a great job of lighting the background here, so we've got some visible ripples in the background and also a shadow over here, so we'll correct that as we go as well. Let's start off by making one of our curves layers. We're going to hit the new adjustment layer button down here, and we're going to choose curves, and as you can see that adds a curves layer above our background layer. We're not going to be damaging any of the original pixels here. We're going to be working entirely within adjustment layers. I'm just going to first of all start by trying the auto button, which if I press that, as you can see, it's done almost nothing to the image. So we're going to have to colour correct this by hand. I'm just going to quickly, it looks a bit orangey to me, so I'm going to start by taking a bunch of red out, and as I know, the first thing I notice as I take the red out, the cheeks are still looking pretty good here, but it's starting to look a bit greeny over here. So if I take the green and just start pulling a little bit of green out there, I think all that's needed is just to do a little bit of work on the blue channel, and that's looking pretty natural. We're just putting a little bit of yellow back in by dragging the blue channel down. Remember, it's on the blue channel, if you're dragging up you're adding blue, if you're dragging down you're adding yellow, so because those are the complementary colours. So that's not a bad starting point for our colour correction. Let's do the first of our steps to do this venture style by creating another curves layer, and this time we're going to use a blending mode to brighten the whole image. Remember, these blending modes are grouped into similar types of blending modes. So the group that starts with darken, all of those 5 will make the image darker. The group that starts with lighten, all of those 5 will make the image lighter. And in this case we want the screen blending mode, which is just, as you can see, is brightening the whole image. So that's a good starting point for our image, but we're going to need to do a little bit more. We need certainly to brighten that background quite a bit more. So let's duplicate that curves layer by dragging that curves layer down to the new layer icon, and that will duplicate the layer. So we've now got 2 screen blended curves layers. It's now way too bright, of course, so let's fill the layer mask on that second curves layer with black, and as you know, the layer mask, white reveals, black conceals, so by filling it with black we are concealing the effect of this layer. So I'm going to hit Alt or Option and Delete on my keyboard to fill that layer mask with my foreground colour. Remember, it's Control or Command Delete to fill with background, and Alt or Option Delete to fill with the foreground colour, and your colours are shown over here at the bottom of your tools palette. Remember, you can always get back to black and white by pressing the D key on your keyboard, and you can switch those colours back and forth by pressing the X key on your keyboard. I'm going to just use that layer mask there on the second screen layer, and I'm going to grab a paintbrush by pressing B, and I'm going to set my opacity to 100% for this edit, because I want to completely knock out that background, and I'm going to paint white on the layer mask for this screen layer, and as you can see that brightens that background layer up that just enough now to make that background ripple and shadow disappear, and we've got a nice clean white background now. So we can do quite a lot with curves layers and layer masks just to selectively brighten and darken. Now let's add another curves layer. Once again, new adjustment layer button, curves, and this time we're going to do a contrast enhancing layer instead of a brightening layer. So in our blending modes, we're going to go to the section that starts with overlay, and this section has got 7 blending modes in it, which will all increase contrast in various different ways. In this case, we want the overlay blending mode, and as you can see, if I turn that layer on and off, that really pushes the contrast way up, and that really is the basis of this whole style. It really makes a big difference to the overall image, as you can see. But it does also introduce a little problem for us. It's starting to make that face look a little overexposed, and it's starting to look a little bit unnatural. So what we need to do now is go back to our screen layer, the first screen layer we did, the one with a completely white layer mask, and once again we'll grab the brush, and this time we're going to grab black, so I'm going to press X to switch to black as my foreground, and I'm going to reduce my opacity this time down to about 50%. And now just going to paint that black onto my layer mask on the darker areas of the picture, and you can see that evens up the light on both sides of the face and just brings back a bit of more natural looking skin tone. We also could do with just a little bit of work here on the side of the hair, so I'm just going to make my brush smaller using the square bracket keys. I'm just going to bring back a bit of detail on the edge of the hair there where it had become overly brightened, and I'm going to also go back to my other screen layer, the one with the mostly black blending mode, click on that layer mask there, and with white as my brush colour, I'm just going to try and bring back a little bit of detail in this hair over here. So just to try and bring back some detail where it's lost, because that high contrast boost will tend to push things over the top towards white, or over the bottom towards black. The final thing I think I would do on this image is, I'm just looking at these eyes and they look a little bit dark to me, so I think what I'll do is, also using that second brightening layer, the one that we used, we filled with the layer mask with black, again with white as my foreground colour, I'm going to make my brush about the size of the area I want to edit, and I'm going to just drop my opacity down even more because I want this to be a subtler edit, and I'm just going to paint white on the layer mask to brighten that eye. And if I turn that on and off, you can see that eye gets brighter. Let's do the same on the other eye, and that's us, I think, looking pretty good. That just gives a little bit more life to those eyes, makes them look a little bit more lively, and just a bit more engagement with the viewer. Okay, that's a good finishing point for this image. I think you can see the sort of style. You're going to have to tweak all these numbers for yourself for your own images, but that's the sort of effect you're trying to achieve, and I think those are the basic tools that you'll need to achieve it. Let's jump on and just see how we can do the same thing in Lightroom. Okay, here's a little quick bonus tip for you. I figured that I could also show you how to do the same venture style processing in Lightroom. So let's have a quick go.
This video is an extract from Photo Walkthrough, an online video show about photography and digital photo editing using Photoshop and Lightroom. If you'd like to see more, you can find all the old shows and subscribe to the new ones for free at photowalkthrough.com.